Hello and welcome. This is Bill Pomaris from bandsolution.net. The purpose of this video is to give a solid browse through my book entitled A Workbook for Jazz Style and Improvisation. I began developing this text in 2001 for a middle school jazz band. Prior to that year, I was always frustrated teaching jazz band because the band would work hard on the ensemble parts forever, trying to get the parts together, and then when we finally got to the solo sections, it was a mess because we spent little time on learning how to improvise. I would take my band to jazz festivals, and I heard the same thing from every school band. I thought to myself, this is just wrong. The essence of jazz is in improvisation, so why am I spending so much time on everything else except for that? So I turned my approach on its head. Instead of learning how to play charts, I was going to teach the students how to improvise and worry about the charts later. A brave step, but a necessary one, and I felt right doing it this way. A big thank you goes out to my colleague and trumpet player Pat Carney for encouraging and helping me to teach this approach. We team taught the jazz band, pushed the development of these skills with all our jazz students, and we were very happy with the results. Improvisation has been described as spontaneous composition. The premise of this book is based on the idea that if one is going to learn how to improvise, it just makes sense to develop some basic skills in composition, so that when you have to compose spontaneously, you have some background knowledge and experience doing it before you have to do it off the top of your head. This premise is supported by Chick Corea in an article interview from Contemporary Keyboard magazine from 1976 entitled Myths Part 2, The Myth of Improvisation. The book is written for the instruments you see here. It started out as single sheets or small packets of sheets that I would hand out to the students to practice and play. I would revise them and improve them as necessary until there were enough pages to warrant binding the pages and packets together in a book. The book is written as a band method, so to speak. The entire book is designed to be played by the whole jazz band as a group. All of the horn parts are unison exercises that fit with what the rhythm section has. The book also works well for individual or small group instruction. I originally designed it for middle school jazz band, but it works well at the high school and even collegiate level, particularly if the students have little or no background in jazz. Next to the table of contents, there is a note on the page regarding additional materials which are available on my website. Just type in the product support passcode and download the file and print your own copies. Also, play along rhythm tracks for the tunes contained herein are also available for playback or download on my website. Just find the page on my website and play them on or download them to your device. After a short introduction, the quote from Chick Corea is printed here so you can understand what he's talking about. If this approach is good enough for a great musician such as Chick, it's good enough for me. So the book begins by addressing rhythm and style. You can't improvise in a certain style unless you can play that style to begin with. If someone asked me to improvise in the style of shakuhachi flute or in the style of an Indian raga, I couldn't do it, as I cannot even play those styles. So these pages demonstrate how to interpret eighth notes in jazz. This approach breaks it down into 5 basic syllables. The next 2 pages are just pages of rhythms, so the students can practice playing the rhythms in the correct style. The students could talk them down with the jazz rhythm syllables that are provided up here. They can practice them on a note or each note of a concert B-flat scale, for instance, or a line or 2 at a time, or 1 note of a scale per measure. Lots of room for creativity here. After this, the style gets into a little bit more detail. Offbeat articulation is introduced as a basic form of style concept to be developed. This is one of the most overlooked concepts in jazz that I hear with young musicians. You wouldn't let 2 slur 2 tongue passages go by in your concert band uncorrected if they didn't match, right? Well, the same is true here. If you want the eighth note jazz lines to swing, The articulation must be unified by applying this concept to the moving eighth lines. This and every exercise from here on out has a rhythm track on my website for practicing. The next thing to learn is chord scale vocabulary. The student is not going to be able to improvise if they don't understand what notes belong to the chords in a jazz tune. So major seventh chords are presented here, and then there is an exercise that will enable the students to learn the arpeggios and scales that apply to the specific chords. Make sure you practice them with the correct style using offbeat articulation. The next page presents the same exercise, but this time as slash notation. The chords and scales are not going to be written out for the students on the lead sheet. They will just see the chord symbols. So this exercise gives the students the chance to navigate the simple technique of these chords by memory, which they will have to have this background knowledge in order to improvise. Next, we get to the tunes and the composition exercises. When I was first trying to develop this approach, I couldn't find jazz tunes that were simple enough and focused enough to have the students develop one step at a time, so I decided to write my own. This first tune, Majority Rules, is a simple 8-bar melody that uses a lot of rhythmic repetition and only 2 major seventh chords. Underneath the tune are steps that a student can take in order to compose their own solo. The students can then practice the main melody, practice running the changes for the tune, practice the written solo, and then, using their solo as a guide and all the background knowledge that they have up to this point, start to improvise over the tune. This process is repeated throughout the rest of the book. A song is introduced, students learn the melody and practice the technique required to play the tune. They're given compositional exercises with instructions for each. Then the students practice improvising on the tune based on their own composition and chord scale knowledge. More chords are introduced as the book goes on, and the chords start changing faster, and new compositional techniques are presented to explore and develop. So at this point, I'm just going to page through the rest of the book. You can pause the video to take a longer look at the exercises. Here's Major Axis, another 8-bar tune, compositional exercises. Here's Double Major, again using major seventh chords. This time there are more of them and they change faster. New chord type, minor seventh chords, shows where it comes from. Here's an exercise to practice with the rhythm track. Here's practice for memorizing minor seventh chords. New song. Minor Offense is an 8-bar melody. Only 2 minor seventh chords are used. Here are improvisation exercises, or composition and then improvisation exercises. Minor 49er. New chord type, dominant seventh chords. Here's the explanation, where it comes from. Here's the exercise to practice to get good at it. Practice for having them memorized. Another song. Dominant roll has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chords in it. Composition and improvisation exercise. Jazz Style Part 3, which develops the concept of ghosting. It shows you some different examples where you would use it or how you would use it. And then here's an exercise that gives practice with each of these. Blue Chunks, a 12-bar blues. This gives a chance not only to compose in the style of blues, but also gives you a chance to practice ghost notes in a tune like this. 2-5-1 exercise. This is the culminating experience of all the chords represented up to this point. Chance to compose your own patterns using the 2-5-1 exercise, and then practice for memorizing. And the last tune in the book is Bopperoni. The last page in the book is guidelines for improvising background chords in a jazz band. You can give this page to have your band create their own arrangements of each of the tunes herein. For example, you could teach your band how to have the saxes play the melody of the tune while the brass plays a full chord background rhythm behind them. Or for instance, the saxes could play background chords behind a trumpet soloist using a rhythm that you give them. Lots of ways to change it up and have some fun. I have also written standard, simple big band arrangements of most of the tunes presented here. They're available for purchase and download on my website. Also be on the lookout for supplementary materials that will become available for download as I write them. Use the product support password at the front of the book to download and enjoy. So that's it. If you like what you see here, you can download order forms from my website, bandsolution.net, and order a set using a purchase order, or you can have your school district pay for them using a credit card through PayPal using the links provided. I feel that my students have been very successful using this book. I've even used it with adult students who have never improvised before. I believe the success my students have had is due in part to the concrete, sequential approach that this method provides. I have tried to present and explain everything very thoroughly in this book, and it usually results in the students having a very solid understanding how to play and improvise in the jazz style. Thanks for checking this out, and good luck.